Hello and welcome to the True Crime Cocktail Hour on Friday evenings. This is our weekly little treat after a tough week of work. And this is where we sit down every Friday, we have a drink together. And since we both love true crime, and we're already here, why don't I tell you about a mysterious true crime story? So, in today's episode, summer of 2010, County Tipperary. When Mary Lowry met Bobby Ryan in summer of 2010, it was love at first sight. Everything was perfect. Or it could have been, if it wasn't for a man who was not so happy with her new relationship. Yet no one knew how far this man was willing to go to keep Mary for himself. That is, until Bobby Ryan disappeared. This is the True Crime Cocktail Hour, and this is a story of love, a young widow, a fatal affair, money, revenge, and the longest trial in the history of Ireland. County Tipperary is the largest county in Ireland, and it looks a little bit like a Game of Thrones film set. There's a lot of castles and farms and forests and meadows as far as the eye can see. And in County Tipperary there's a townland called Fanagown, and this is where we meet Mary Lowry's family. Mary Lowry and her husband Martin are milk farmers, and they have this big-ass farm in Fanagown, which is going quite well. And then Martin and Mary also have 3 sons together, Tommy, Jack, and Michael, and it's just a perfect life for the 4 of them. Now, taking care of a big-ass farm like that is quite some work, you know? Luckily for Mary and Martin, they have this befriended couple who happens to live just right next door. And the 2 of them are really good friends, the 2 couples, and they also help each other out on the farm. And this befriended couple is Pat Quirk and his wife, Imelda. The 2 of them are milk farmers as well. And sometimes they would just get together, double date, and they just hang out and everybody's getting along. But then Pat and Martin, they're also like really, really good friends, and they share a lot of the work that's coming up at the farm. And they also invest in machines together. So let's say there's a hot new milking machine on the market. They just throw the money together and buy one and then share. But then in 2007, Martin gets a diagnosis that would change their lives forever. So he had some trouble with his knee, he had pain in his knee, and it's been going on forever. And he attributed that to an old sports injury. And Martin was like, okay, maybe I should have it checked out, maybe I need surgery or something. So he went to the doctor and he had it checked out. And unfortunately, it wasn't an old sports injury. No, it turned out that it was actually final stage bone cancer. And Martin ended up dying the very same year at the young age of 43. And poor Mary over here, she was suddenly on her own with 3 kids and this big-ass farm she had to take care of. Luckily, the neighbors and friends, Pat Quirk and Imelda, were there for her, especially Pat. Not only offered he a shoulder to lean on or to cry on, he was there the entire time taking care of Mary, but he also helped her on the farm a lot. And then someday he goes over to Mary and he makes a proposal. So he's like, okay, I suggest to you that I should lease 25 acres of your land for the amount of $12,000 every year. So Mary could make a little extra money and have less land to take care of, which is quite nice. But you know how it is, a shoulder to cry on. What can I say? You probably guessed it. 4 months after Martin's death, friendship turned into passion, and passion into an affair. So this affair had just started, right? But right away, Mary felt so bad about what she did. Not only was she sleeping with her dead husband's best friend, but he had a wife of himself. Remember, Imelda? Yeah. So he was cheating on his very much alive wife with Mary, who Imelda was actually good friends with. And I guess the right thing to do here would be to just end the affair. And I guess Mary knew that, and if she only had done it. However, for some reason, Mary was never able to end this affair for years. And man, she really should have ended this affair, because over the years, things turned for the worst. First of all, Pat became very controlling, not only of the farm, but also of Mary. He wanted to know where she is going, who does she meet up with, and everything had to go according to his plan only. You see, Patrick, he's in love with Mary, okay? He fell in love with her and he needs her. But more importantly, he needs her bank account. That's right, because Pat likes to invest in various projects. Not with his own money, of course, no. And sometimes, in his defense, it actually works out and they make a little bit of extra money. But that is the exception and not the rule. And for the most part, Mary lost money. She still would not end this affair. And Patrick went even one step further. And I don't know how he did it, but he managed to convince Mary to change her will and testament. So in the case of her death, the kids and the farm would go over to Pat and his wife, Imelda. You think that's it? Oh, God, no. No. This piece of shit is actually also a real fraudster. Vaccinating the cows, do you know how much money that is? Too expensive. So whenever Pat would sell a cow to another farmer, he would just tell them, oh, they're vaccinated, even though they're really not. But after 3 years, in summer of 2010, Mary has had enough, and she ends her relationship with Pat. That doesn't keep him from working at the farm though. He is there all of the time. And obviously he still helps himself to her bank account. But even though Pat was on the farm and still in Mary's face, she was really serious about ending this relationship, especially after she met a new man. And this new man is truck driver Bobby Ryan, or as he's also called, Mr. Moonlight. Mr. Moonlight is actually his stage name because Bobby Ryan over here is also a passionate DJ. He's also very much of a family man. He's a lot of fun to be around. He's easygoing, he's charming, he can easily make new friends. He loves music and he loves to party. And even more importantly, he makes Mary laugh, which is something that she really desperately needs right now after the sudden death of her husband and this parasite of a lover who is sucking money and the life out of her. But Pat does not like to lose, and he's losing Mary, and he's not happy with this new development. Mary belongs to me. Time to defend my territory. So the first thing Pat did, he stole Mary's phone, and he took Bobby's phone number off the phone, and he called Bobby, and he threatened him on the phone, saying that Mary and him were still together and that Bobby should stay away from her and all of that nonsense. To my surprise, it actually worked, and Bobby broke it off. But that lasted just a couple of days until Mary one day showed up at his doorstep and she explained everything to him, what was going on with her husband and Pat being there and this affair and whatnot. And then Bobby is like, okay, I understand what you're going through, and that actually makes a lot of sense. So he gave her another chance, but at the same time he was like, okay, maybe I need to take care of this Pat guy. We gotta settle this. It can't go on like that anymore. So Bobby actually calls up Pat and he invites him over to a bar to have a beer so Pat could get to know him. So the two of them are sitting there, right? And then Bobby tells him, hey, listen, man, I'm sorry you're heartbroken, but this is her decision and she's with me now and I'm a good guy. I will take care of her. She'll be fine with me. But man, the best thing for us to do right now is you gotta move on, and the two of us should really just shake hands and move on with our lives. And what do you know? Pat actually agrees. At first. But then one morning, Mary comes home from dropping her sons off at the school and her front door is open. Completely wide open. So she goes inside, only to find Pat Quirk standing in her kitchen. And Mary's like, hey, what the fuck are you doing here? What are you doing in my kitchen? And Pat was like, oh, the door was open and I just went in. I wanted to check up on you. Mary was 100% certain that she closed the door on her way out. So precautionary, she had the door locks replaced. However, every step she took to get him out of her life turned into his behavior becoming alarming more and more every single day. Example, Valentine's Day of 2011, right? Mary gets a letter in the mail and it's from the social service. And the letter says that there have been allegations against her that said that she was neglecting her children. red alert. So Mary, she calls up the social service and she's like, hey, these allegations are wrong. Come to my house, come see for yourself. My children are perfectly fine. And so they do just that. And it became clear, like quite quickly, that these allegations were in fact very, very wrong. I don't really need to tell you the source of these allegations. Pat Kirk. However, there is more. Listen to this, you're gonna love this. So 1 week after the social service incident, Mary sits at home on a Sunday reading the newspaper over breakfast. It's always the same newspaper. It's the Sunday Independent, one of Ireland's largest newspapers. So she opens it up, and this newspaper, right, they have like an advice section called Dear Patricia. And it's where people can go and write a letter to this woman, Patricia. She really does exist. And they tell her about their situation and they ask for advice, right? And then Patricia goes and she reads through these letters and she answers most of them. And some of these letters will be printed in this newspaper, right? So Mary, she opens up the newspaper and this advice section and she starts reading one of the letters of one of their readers. And actually, I have it right here. I actually printed it out because there's no way I'm learning this by heart. So are you ready? You're gonna want to hear this. Okay. You ready? Okay. I've made a real mess of my life and I need help on how to go forward. It all started 4 years ago when my best friend died. This man was also my wife's cousin and a close family friend. He left a wife and a younger family after him. I coped by throwing myself into doing all I could for my friend's wife and children. There was much sorting out to do in relation to his business. Unfortunately, this led to an affair with his wife, and I fell deeply in love with her. It lasted 3 years and came to an abrupt end recently when I found out that she was seeing somebody else. When I confronted her, she claimed that she had fallen out of love with me and was waiting for an opportunity to end quote-unquote us. This was a defining moment for both of us. She no longer depended on me and quickly forgot about me by putting all her energy into developing this new relationship. This man promised everything that I couldn't. She introduced him to everyone in the family, including my wife, and they were all delighted that she had found love again. My problem is that I am broken-hearted and angry at how well things have worked out for her despite her lying and cheating on me. We meet on a constant basis as we have a business connection as well as a family connection. She refuses to discuss our affair and says it is in the past. She has confessed it to her new lover while I have no closure and I'm forced to carry this dark secret alone. I know I have done wrong. I contemplated telling her, but I feel it would do nothing to relieve my burden while it would devastate her. I have been diagnosed with depression, but none of the medication is working. My wife has been a tremendous support and loves me deeply. Ironically, this almost makes things worse. Unfortunately, while I love my wife, I am not in love with her. I'm still in love with my ex-lover, even though I accept that the affair is over. I wish I wasn't, and wish I could transfer the feelings I have for her back to my wife. How do I begin to rebuild my life? Okay, I guess there's this whole team behind this advice column, right? But like I said, this woman, Patricia, she really does exist. She died a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But I am her biggest fan because this woman destroyed his ass, okay? I got her answer right here. Okay, here's her answer. You're gonna love this. You could begin by ditching the self-pity. Don't you know the most basic rule in life, namely that the wrongdoer doesn't get the luxury of saying he's having a hard time? And he most certainly can't feel sorry for himself. You chose to have an affair, it's gone south. Tough. And that's letting you off lightly. We could tell this story differently. You made a move on a newly widowed woman who not only saw you as a support because you were her husband's friend, but who also depended on you for business reasons. She was vulnerable. Even if she made the first move, a kind man would have sidestepped, allowing her time to get back on her feet. A married man with any decency would definitely have backed away. I love this pitch. Okay. It could be argued, in short, that you have broken faith with two women. Not to mention the fact that all of this is effectively happening within the family, so very definitively in your own backyard. Not nice. There's something else you apparently don't understand. As her married lover, you had no claim on this woman at all. She didn't cheat on you. She simply found someone else, just as you hung on to someone else, namely your wife. The really troubling thing is that you are so self-absorbed, not to mention the fact that even now you're failing to take responsibility for your own actions. You say you unfortunately had an affair as if it were entirely beyond your control. And while you mention shame, it doesn't ring true, to be brutally honest. Sometimes happiness is simply a question of taking stock and then being grateful for what life has given you. You are getting a second chance, an opportunity to make good. To Patricia. So Mary, right away, she knew that Patrick wrote this letter, so she went up to him and she confronted him. And he doesn't even deny it. He also doesn't apologize. And this is it. And Mary has had enough. And she changed her will again. This time, in the case of her death, the kids and the farm should go over to her brother and not this fucked up moron. So you could say Mary does all the right things. And I really do think she believed that this is it. This is the last straw. She took care of it and Patrick being now out of her life. Until one day, Bobby Ryan all of a sudden disappeared. So Bobby, he had spent the night at Mary's house, but he wanted to go back to his place in the morning to pick up his working shoes and his lunchbox before going to work. But when his son Robert came down the stairs that very morning, the working shoes and the lunchbox hadn't moved 1 inch. Now to Robert, it's not that alarming, right away. He thinks, okay, maybe they have overslept or it's been a long night and they lost track of time. It happens. But then Bobby's boss calls Robert and tells him, hey, where's your father? He didn't show up for work. So Robert calls his sister Michelle first, and she also doesn't know where her father is, so she calls Mary. But Mary tells her, I'm sorry, dear, Bobby left my house perfectly on time. Again, red alert. This is very concerning. So Mary and Michelle, they meet up and they drive to the police station and report Bobby Ryan missing. Now Bobby Ryan, after his first divorce, he fell into a really deep depression and he even spoke about suicidal tendencies. And this is why his case was considered a high priority case, because maybe he was going to do something to himself. So after Mary and Michelle had reported Bobby missing, they got back into the car and they just kept driving and looking for him everywhere. And Michelle, I guess, she has a really, really close relationship with her father. And I guess there's this emotional connection that you feel like something is wrong. So Michelle, the entire car ride, like a maniac, she's just sitting there in a passenger seat and she goes he's in the forest, he's in the forest, he's in the woods, I can feel it, he's in the forest. And Mary's like, hey, what are you talking about? Why would she say that? And Michelle is like, I just feel it, that he's in the forest. So Mary, she drives on and on until they end up at a parking lot of the Bencher Woods. And they get out of the car and they take a few steps. And there it is, Bobby's silver truck. But no trace of Bobby. And more alarmingly even, all of his DJ equipment is still in the trunk of his car, untouched. But his driver's license is in the passenger seat. And the driver's seat had been repositioned. So police is informed and everybody's like, okay, maybe he's indeed in the forest. Let's check out the area. So the police and a whole group of volunteers, they combed through the forests, but nothing. And days passed and months passed without a trace of Bobby. And surprise, surprise, suddenly Pat is standing in front of Mary's doorstep and tries to romantically pursue her again. Please don't ask me why. But Mary actually agreed to go on a weekend getaway with him, which she did. Even though that's really all she did, after this weekend getaway, when she got back home, she again told Pat that she was absolutely not interested in rekindling this affair. As you can imagine, Pat did not like that one bit. So he goes to Mary and he tells her, hey, you come back to me, or I am going to tell my wife about us. And then Mary's like, be my guest. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to tell her myself because I am tired of you and living this life. And Mary actually does just that. So she went over to Imelda and she told her about this affair. Now, I don't know what Imelda's thought process is here, but she decided to forgive her husband, but not Mary. But still, Patrick won't give up. Get this. So there are these motion sensors on Mary's farm, right? It's actually intended for like wild animals approaching the farm. That had never happened up to this point. So if the alarm would ever go off, it would be like a false alarm, and it would just only like happen once or twice a year. However, after Mary told Imelda about her affair, the alarm would go off 17 times in a row. So Mary, she had some security cameras installed because she thought, okay, this is not a coincidence, something is up. And she was right. The next time the alarm went off, she checked the security camera footage only to see Pat Quirk standing in front of her house, fumbling in her underwear that she had hung out on the clothesline. And he also would go through her mailbox, see who had written her. And sometimes he would peek through the windows and just being the little creep that he is. However, Mary did not report this to the police. She first went and decided to terminate the leasing contract of the 25 acres with Patrick, right? That still wouldn't keep him from entering her property unallowed. And this is when Mary filed a report with the police. And the police, they went up to Pat and they sat him down. And they gave him a talking to. Hey, buddy, whatever you're doing,
fucking don't, okay?
And apparently that was quite effective, because Patrick, from that moment on, left Mary alone. But actually that was just the beginning of his demise. On the 30th of April 2011, the police in County Tipperary got a phone call. Somebody had found a dead body in a disused underground tank. So police, they drive out to this place that was named by the caller, and when they get there, a waving Pat Quirk and his wife Imelda were already awaiting them. That's right, my dear children, out of all people, Pat Quirk found Bobby Ryan's dead body on his property in one of his underground tanks. Pat initially told police that he was about to go to the water tank and get some water for mixing slurry when he saw the dead body. And the police were looking at him and they're like, you wanted to mix slurry? Because Pat, oh man, he looks neat as a pin. Showered, shaved, dressed up, alright? No dirt, no mud whatsoever. DNA analysis later confirmed that it was indeed the body of Bobby Ryan. Autopsy report, blunt force trauma against the head and the face. Also 9 broken ribs and a broken upper leg. Cause of death, car accident, or homicide. Now, honey, the next 8 years were full of investigations, allegations, interrogations. A lot of people were put in custody and then released again. There were like endless paper piles of witness reports you can't even begin to imagine. I don't want to go through with it all. And it actually doesn't matter, because in August of 2019, the trial began for the murder of Bobby Ryan on the dog, Pat Quirk. This trial would be the longest in the history of Ireland. Okay, we're talking 13 to 15 weeks, depending on the source. I don't want to go through everything because otherwise we would be sitting here tomorrow. So if you don't mind, I would just summarize it and like give you the headlines. Okay? Cool. Okay, 3 things we have to go over. First, motive, jealousy and money. Bobby Ryan was a rival for Pat Quirk, not only for the woman he loved, but also for the revenue of this farm. You get it. Next. Number 2, the finding of the body. The underground tank where Bobby Ryan's body was found in belonged to Pat's property / the 25 acres he had leased from Mary. Pat over here had 3 underground water tanks built on this property, but he told police that he only had 2 of them, not 3. The third he covered up with a bale of straw, so no one knew of its existence. No one other but Pat Quirk. And also the motive for going to this underground water tank. Pat said that he wanted to get water to mix slurry, right? But the tank, girl, it was empty. There was no water in it. And not only that, the tank looked like it hadn't been used for years. The tank itself was actually so porous that the water would like leak through the walls and right into the ground. There was no chance that water could even fill up in it. And remember, and this is even the most important point, The leasing contract was terminated by Mary, and Pat was obligated to hand over the property, the 25 acres, back to Mary on the 1st of July. Now, if he did so, and the new owner would find the body, it would shine a very suspicious light on Pat. So his plan was to accidentally find the body before someone else did. And number 3, the thing that we all love and hate, the internet. When they searched Pat's home to find forensic evidence that he was actually involved, they also took his laptop with them. And they took a look at it, and they realized that Pat had indeed made some very suspicious Google searches. DNA analysis, limits of DNA analysis, decomposition of a body, how long does it take for a body to decompose? And the defense team was like, actually, you don't have much of a case, it's all circumstantial evidence. The way it should work is that you hop on a train at a train station called Innocence, and then the prosecution is the train driver, and its goal is to get you to this other train station that's called Guilty. And the rails that you need are the rails of evidence, and you, mister, have no rails. And 2 jury members actually agreed with them. 10 jury members, however, did not, and Pat Quirk was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, as he should. Pat obviously filed an appeal with the Supreme Court, and his defense team argued that the police did not explicitly explain that they were going to take the laptop with them, and so it would be unlawful, and the Google searches could no longer be considered forensic evidence. But the appeal was denied, and the verdict was confirmed. This is the story of the murder of Bobby Ryan, a very poor man who had nothing to do with this whole effing mess. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let me know what you think down below. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because it would really make my day. And yeah, what's left to say is, if you don't have any plans next Friday, why don't you meet me here for another cocktail and, of course, a mysterious true crime case. Mwah.